All right. Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of That Film Podcast. I'm your host, David Weaver, and with me, as usual, are Brian Salazar and James Blunt. See, that time I introduced both of you and got your last names in there. Booyah! Anyways, this week we're going to be reviewing the highly anticipated sequel to the 2012 franchise reboot, Amazing Spider-Man 2.
I once told you that secrets have a cost. The truth does too.
My name is Richard Parker, and I know what Oscorp is capable of.
Peter Parker, Harry Osborn.
I need to find Spider-Man.
Why? I'm dying. It's not that simple.
I wish I was like him. The Amazing Spider-Man.
I want you to make Spider-Man bleed.
This is bigger than you, Peter.
I'm the only one who can stop them. I'm Spider-Man.
Every decision you make affects the people you love.
Rated PG-13.
And James is going to be leading us off this week for it. So, James, the floor is yours.
Thanks. So, this movie, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, is obviously the much-anticipated sequel to 2012's film, The Amazing Spider-Man. And as more started to be known about this film, such as how many villains are in it and who some of the villains would be played by, my expectations steadily decreased to the point that about 3 weeks ago when we did our summer movie preview show, and I should say for any of the listeners who haven't heard that yet, you should go back and check that show out. When we had that show and I thought about this movie, I thought to myself, I fully expect to hate this film. And then I had to take a step back, and I did a full reset, and I kind of cleared my palate, and I told myself that I would approach this movie with a completely open mind, and I would not judge anything about it until I saw it. And so that's what I did. And with that said, I'm going to say I didn't hate this movie. In fact, through much of this movie, I enjoyed the film. But I think I've given you a little clue there when I say through much, but not all of this movie, I enjoyed the film. So there are several things, and I won't call them flaws, that I'll point out later. But before I do that, I just want to say, just in an overall sense and without going into detail, I'd say I give this movie about a 7. I mean, if I was pressed, I would think about moving to an 8, but my heart tells me like this is a 7 out of 10. And like I said, before we move on, I'm curious about what you guys thought, just from a very general sense, just a number rating, like Brian and Dave. What did you guys give The Amazing Spider-Man 2?
Go ahead, Dave.
I'll make one quick statement here, and then I'll give you the number that you asked for, James.
Okay.
My quick statement is that this film is not the train wreck I was expecting. And I'll, of course, get into more detail about that as well later. But if I had to give it a score, I'd say a 7 is, I mean, that's pretty solid. I think it's a pretty solid 7. Yeah. I'd have to agree with you on that. I definitely would never even consider giving it an 8.
I would think about it, but 7 is where my heart is.
Yeah, 7's pretty good.
And so what about you, Brian?
Well, James, I'm not going to go into any detail yet. I'm just going to give you the number.
Okay.
I would say that 7 is right on, but I would, like Dave, not give it an 8, but also think about giving it a 6. I think after multiple viewings, 6 might be the number, but as of right now, it's 7.
Well, that's the truth, actually, that multiple viewings change a lot of things. And yeah, if I
Also,
saw this
also tie-ins for the sequel and everything else,
Mhm.
take into account that type of thing.
Okay, so we're
And,
jumping
and,
ahead.
and yeah,
Go
and
ahead.
deeper understanding of the film also later on will also help for change your opinion of it most likely as well.
Oh, you mean where it fits into the overall
Where it
story?
fits in and some other stuff that we'll be bringing up later on, that I will be bringing up.
Okay. So I want to say that the first thing that struck me is, while I was watching the movie, is that Jamie Foxx is an Academy Award winner, and I think it really shows during this film because the character development that he is able to kind of exude and provide to the character of Max Dillon throughout this movie, I felt that is what made Electro a compelling character. And I take back every doubt that I had when he was announced as being cast in this role, and I just kind of crapped all over it. I take all of that back. And I mean, and I feel like I'm admitting that I was wrong about that. That's the whole point of that.
Can I talk real big my
Sure.
feelings about Electro?
Yeah.
So to me, it's not Jamie Foxx is being the issue of this character at all. To me, I'm getting tired of the same type of villain storylines that are always given in these comic book movies.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any reason to make this guy as nerdish and as goofy and everything else, and is very Riddlerish? If anybody remembers,
Yeah, I had visions of Edward Nygma from the Batman Forever.
Yeah, I don't know why filmmakers, or I guess writers more than anything, think that this has to be the standard of creating a villain.
Well, because they don't know what they're doing. That's it. Period. But yeah, you mentioned Edward Nygma. The moment that I won't ruin it. The moment that he became Electro, I felt like, well, they just stole the scene out of the original Batman, because that seemed like how Joker was born.
Yep.
So I was like, well, this is nothing new here. Like this is a retread.
And then also not to tread over your what you're saying here, James. Not to derail you, I should say. But my biggest concern with how they handled the Electro character and Max Dillon is that he seemed to change personalities like on the fly. Like all of a sudden he became highly tempered and very dangerous because he had powers, whereas before that he was this kind of simple fellow who wouldn't harm a fly. And I didn't understand where that change happened. I mean, I would understand it after the torture scenes that happened later in the film, but I didn't understand it that quickly.
My only explanation for that was going back to Joker, that the whole process that created the super character, so in this instance it's Electro, I'm assuming that caused him to go insane in some way.
Okay.
But I think you're left to read into that on your own.
Yeah. Okay.
Are we? Can we talk a little bit about spoilers here?
Well, I mean, James is still kind of going through his thing here.
Okay.
I mean, if you could,
But what is the area that you wanted to?
No,
do?
it's about Electro is what I'm talking about. Since we're on the Electro subject.
Well, I mean, spoiler, like you mean like end stuff?
No, like how he became Electro.
Go ahead. I was dancing
okay.
around it, but go ahead.
Okay, so what I don't quite understand, again, this is all writing, of course, is so he turns into Electro, or the evil version of Electro, because he thinks Spider-Man duped him, and he got shot at. Am I right about that?
Yes.
But at the same time, he joins Oscorp, who left him out to do this, to fix the wires.
You're saying it's inconsistent.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure. Okay. Continue,
Although,
James.
I mean,
he didn't really join Oscorp,
Oscorp.
who also has a beef with
Oscorp. Right.
So.
But it seems that at the end of it, Oscorp is going to go back to what it was.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So I mean, that's about the Jamie Foxx character, and I think we already know how good Dane DeHaan is in these types of roles. So when he started becoming the darker character in his portrayal of Harry Osborn, it actually made me look forward to future movies in the series, just to kind of watch Dane DeHaan work his craft. Um, and so, as much as going into this movie, I was worried about like a movie that has too many villains in it. I thought that the overall pacing of the exposure to the villains was well done, or at least well handled, because we, in a general sense, without going into too much, we get a fairly complete look at Electro, and then they kind of build towards the future with Harry Osborn's Goblin character. And then with Rhino, I mean, as much as they featured Rhino in the trailer, his scene really could have been an after credits Easter egg scene. It honestly did not need to be part of the main film. And actually, directly before the Rhino scene, I thought that was the end of the movie. So to me, it was almost like a false ending.
Yeah.
And then they come back with the Rhino scene.
I don't want to get too much into the ending just yet, but I think that they should have saved that what was happening in that, what you're saying is the false ending. They should have saved that for the opening scene of the next Spider-Man.
Well, I have a belief about why they didn't do that, but
okay.
Again, then we'd start talking about the ending.
Yeah.
And so also, just in passing, since we're talking about various different characters, I don't know how you guys felt about it, but I enjoyed the flashes of Captain Stacy, who's played by Dennis Leary. Because he was almost kind of haunting Spider-Man throughout the film, and so where the thing where he would just kind of look at someone, and for a second he would think it was Captain Stacy, I was okay with that. It sounds like you disagree, Dave.
No, I liked the imagery, but I think they did it too many times. I
agree with that.
There was a bit too much foreshadowing of things that were going to happen at the end of this. So.
Wait, is that Jack?
So.
Little swig for the drink for the.
No one's going to understand that.
I know. Right.
Okay. So I mean, I'm trying to make this a little more interactive. I want to stop and ask you guys, because I felt that I went in this really honestly thinking it's going to be jam-packed with villains, it's going to suck, it's going to be a cluster F like the Batman 2 was when it had, all 100 different villains. Like, I thought it was going to be like that, and I think that they handled it kind of well. So what did you guys think about, the different villains?
I didn't have a problem with the villains or the main characters. I'd had problems more with the story itself.
I have the only issue I took with the way the film handled its villains and those characters was that I mean, like you said, like the actors did what they could with the material they were given, and it really elevated their characters beyond probably what was on the written page. But I still think that the movie itself and the script, I treated the villains too much like plot devices more than actual real characters, because there were certain things in this that just felt like they were just setting everything up. Like the whole friendship between Harry and Peter felt very forced. And I mean, this was hammered home even more, like on my drive home with my girlfriend when we were talking about the movie, that she couldn't remember in the last movie, Amazing Spider-Man, if Harry was introduced in that. She kept on remembering the scenes between Peter Parker and Harry Osborn from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man.
Okay. So let me jump in right there and say that when they started talking about Norman Osborn, I was picturing Willem Dafoe. And because I thought for sure that's he's gonna be, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, like yeah, this is a reboot, and like that was the old series, and like all of this. So yeah, this is a mess.
My wife was totally confused. My wife was totally confused when we talked about it on the way home.
Yeah, it's because like she said, like I understood that they were friends only because of what I saw in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, not because they established it in these new reboots.
Gotcha.
Because I mean, they make it seem like that they were old pals, and they never. I mean, I don't even remember them even mentioning Harry Osborn.
Right.
In
And
the last
theoretically, we're supposed to pretend like those first three movies don't exist because this is a whole different series and a whole different world.
And that walk that the two of them have, like along the river there, is basically all set up, like trying to like make these two characters, make us understand that these two characters are friends.
It's visual exposition.
Yeah.
Because they have no other way of establishing that relationship for the viewer.
So stuff like that, I had a bit of an issue with, and the aforementioned, like Electro, like I enjoyed the scenes with Electro, but it felt like after his initial coming out party, I guess you'd say, when the showdown between him and Spider-Man early on in the film, like after that, it felt like they shelved him until they needed him for the last act, and then they brought him back. And that's what I mean by using them as plot devices more as characters, where they're just juggling too many things. And yeah, like we said, I think they handled it well for what they were trying to do here, but I still think the characters were there was a great disservice done to these characters. There was probably better stories and better ways to introduce these characters to us than the way that they're doing it.
I think they just kind of painted themselves into a corner because they're trying to be their own movies and they don't want to copy anything from the original one. The problem is that the original ones were popular, that people remember those storylines too well.
Yeah.
I mean, who was that actor's name that played? He was in the Green Goblin in this one, but his father.
Oh,
the actor in this one?
Yeah, I know he's from Muppets.
Chris Cooper.
Yeah,
Right.
I think he would have been pretty badass as Green Goblin, the first one. But I think they didn't want to go that route because it was too similar to the first trilogy of movies. I don't know. It seemed kind of quick and forced, and I think he always seemed like an odd or dark character, the young Goblin. As soon as he was introduced to the screen, you kind of already knew that he's gonna be bad, and I didn't quite buy the relationship that they possibly had. Oh, I remember you when I was 8 months old. No, I'm just kidding. It was like 8 years old.
And
I think they said.
You just reminded me of this, Brian, and maybe I missed something, but that one scene, Chris Cooper basically has one scene in this movie, and it's a scene with him on his deathbed in the beginning. He tells Harry that, like, hey, we have this genetic disease that's gonna eventually kill you. And what I didn't quite understand is, did he tell him that this is happening to you and it's going to happen quicker? Because it seemed like Chris Cooper lived a pretty long life. Norman Osborn lived a pretty long life. And I don't know if that was through all his genetic testing or what. They didn't really go into that. But it seemed like immediately after that scene, Harry Osborn felt like he was dying like next week.
What he said was that you are at the age where it starts to develop. So, have you noticed your hand twitch or whatever?
Yeah.
But he didn't say anything about Harry being accelerated, but they give you the impression that it's very debilitating, and they show Norman Osborn with a cane, past images of him with a cane and kind of stooped over, like his back is really bad or stuff like that. I don't even know that it was happening to Harry faster. It's just that he had a life full of pain to look forward to.
Yeah, it just felt like he got really crazed a bit too fast, and I think once again that has to do with the amount of stuff they were cramming into this movie. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they probably would have given his character more time to get to that point. But I don't know. It just seemed kind of funny, and I don't know. Most people didn't even realize this, but the fact that they have Black Cat in the movie, and from what I understand, they totally destroyed her mythology from the way that they introduced her in this movie. She was Felicia, Harry Osborn's assistant.
So I noticed that her name was Felicia. I'm the comic book guy, and I didn't even put together that she's supposed to be Black Cat.
What?
I don't know where you would get that. Why would you think that she's supposed to be Black Cat?
It was back
because her name is Felicia?
She's in a Spider-Man movie?
It was back about a year ago during the casting process for the film where they announced that they had hired Felicity Jones on as Felicia, and at that point they were remarking that the character was related to or going to be somehow or another Black Cat. I can't remember. It's been a while, but there was a lot of discussion about that character when it was announced. So.
Well, I didn't hear that, and I knew that this character's name was Felicia, and there was no reason for me to think that that she was Black Cat. I mean, if at some point they called her Felicia Hardy, and I didn't pick up on that, then that's my bad. But all I knew was her name was Felicia, and I never put that together with Black Cat.
Okay. Well, hopefully that she isn't Black Cat, but I'm pretty sure that that's what they were setting up with her. But I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't really have much more thoughts on the villains other than the stuff we could talk about during the end. During this, I guess we're gonna have a spoiler section.
Well, then I'm going to start talking about story now. Okay. And I said before that overall I enjoyed this film, and I actually enjoyed it for many of the reasons that I thought would make me hate it. Like, I really believed I would hate Jamie Foxx, and I didn't. I actually thought he was one of the brighter notes. In fact, it's not the acting. I think you touched on this, Dave. It's not the acting. It's more or less what's on the page that is the problem. But at the same time, Brian didn't. When Brian did the box office, he didn't go into Rotten Tomatoes. The last time I checked, this movie was 54%, which is certified rotten. Or I don't think they certify rottens; they certify freshness. but it's rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, and I don't think it deserves that. Anecdotally, I've heard a lot of people saying that this movie just flat sucks, and I don't think it sucked.
I don't think so either.
Like I said, we've all decided that a 7 is a good score for it, and that's not suck. That's just like it's someone reviewed it as the mediocre Spider-Man, and I think that's
a lot better than Iron Man 3.
More like it. Well, it's a heck of a lot better than Iron Man 3.
And
that
it's
movie
also
does suck.
And it's also a step up from the last Spider-Man movie.
Oh yeah, I agree with that too.
Yeah, they definitely made some changes for the better with this. And with all the things they're juggling, they did a hell of a job. But the funny thing is, I think the Amazing Spider-Man's like around 70 or something like that on Rotten Tomatoes, which is just really strange.
I see. Well, talking about the storyline, I try very, very hard to separate the comic books from these movies. And even though it makes me cringe sometimes, I try to allow for the fact that I know that Hollywood wants to, and in some cases has to, take creative license with some of these established works. And I've mentioned on, I think one of our previous shows before, that this whole storyline where Peter Parker's parents are spies, that comes from the Ultimate Spider-Man alternative timeline of comics. And what this movie doesn't mention is that in those comics, Peter's father develops the genetically modified spiders because he was recruited by Nick Fury to recreate the Super Soldier
I wonder
Serum.
why they don't bring that part up.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. He was recruited by Nick Fury to recreate the Super Soldier Serum that created Captain America. And it's specifically because the ownership of the Marvel properties is so fractured right now that we can't even begin to go down that path. And when I was watching this, I was thinking, based on where the Avengers line of movies is right now, imagine if they could do that. Imagine if Peter's father had realized that Hydra had infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D., and that's why he had to go into hiding, or something like that. Oh. And imagine if they could have had an appearance by Nick Fury in this movie, which I'll repeat, I've said this on a previous show also.
To explain to him what's going on?
Or to do something. The black Nick Fury that's based on Samuel Jackson's likeness, that also comes from the Ultimate line of Marvel comic books. So if the Marvel properties weren't fractured up the way that they are, we could have so much more synergy through all of these line of comics. And it feels really disjointed that it's ended up this way, where we have kind of three separate lines of Marvel movies. And with that said, I want to give credit where it's due and say that the way that they decided to explain why the Spider Venom works on Peter and it doesn't work on anyone else, I was satisfied with that explanation.
I got an issue with it.
Oh, you do?
It's too much of a coincidence. Everything in this movie is too much of a coincidence. There's no need to tie every single main character to each other in some way. That's why I like Rhino's character, because he seems to be the only real villain in the whole place that wants to do bad.
But see, the thing is, when we watched that first movie, I immediately said, okay, what is experimental about these spiders? Because you have this room of spiders, and Peter's accidentally bitten by one, and he becomes this superhero. So why doesn't everybody walk into the room of spiders? Like, if you go back to that old show, I said exactly that, and they explained in this movie why that wouldn't work.
And I explained it in that old show you're talking about, because that was the infamous scenes that they had taken out of the original, out of the Amazing Spider-Man, so that they could tell that story in this film.
And what were those things that they took out? Remind us, because I don't remember.
There was okay. Amazing Spider-Man. Just a quick reminder. Amazing Spider-Man. There was another character who was constantly badgering the character of Kurt Connors, who was like some corporate stiff that was like working for Norman Osborn, and that character mysteriously disappears in the middle of that film after the Lizard abducts him. And the missing scene was the Lizard taking this man down to a secret laboratory in the subways and discovering there, and Peter Parker as Spider-Man going down there and finding the man there who tells Peter what his true origin is at that point, and him learning that way. And these scenes are actually, you can actually see these in the original trailer for the Amazing Spider-Man that they cut out. They were never put on the disc or anything like that. But they said the reason they cut them out is because they wanted to try and spread Spider-Man's origin over like the course of the 3 films that they're making. So, but yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I already knew that from back then. So that reveal in this didn't really mean much to me because they had already unveiled it a couple years ago. So
it sounds a little bit different though than what.
Oh yeah. We weren't talking about magic subway cars that come up out of the ground.
Oh, you're jumping ahead. Oh man, you want to talk about something I had a problem with? Okay.
But to me, I could have just done without the whole parent storyline, but they were forced into it.
Well, they decided to go down this path because no other telling of Spider-Man has told this story of Peter's parents. It's just kind of been Aunt May and Uncle Ben.
And it's sad that opening scene was so ridiculous, too. With that whole fight for the laptop and the airplane.
Oh, okay. So, moving on. So, in these kind of movies, there are certain tropes and cliches that I always really hate to see, and what started getting me about this movie and what started putting me on a downward kind of spiral, because like I said, I've already explained a lot of things I like about the movie, but it has so many of these cliches that it was really starting to hurt me. And I mean, for example, the movie has this thing where, and this is a trope or a cliche, where someone hides like some really super vital information, but they hide it in a place that no one could possibly ever find it. But somehow our hero figures out like where it's hidden.
Well, they can't find it unless they have a calculator that busts open.
That is, stop. Because that goes right into my next cliche that I hate, where there's some mystery and an individual has a piece of evidence. He's had it for 10 years and he's looked at it every which way, and then suddenly 10 years later he finds a secret compartment, and that holds the key to the big mystery. But from that standpoint, I don't even understand what Peter found. And, like, I don't understand why it was hidden in the first place, and I don't understand how it led him to where it led him.
He found a video.
But he found all those tokens. And when he found those tokens, he was like, "Oh, I know exactly what this is." And then that led him right to where he was supposed to go. I didn't get any of that.
Well, don't skip over the part that, you know, the second he dropped into the sewers, he found it.
Yeah, well, I'm going to assume that for the standpoint of just, like, tighter editing, like, him searching the depths of the sewer was cut out.
Okay.
I'm just going to go with that.
Do either of you have an issue with the fact that, like, okay, so the beginning, like I said, was stupid with the whole fighting over laptop, but the idea that he was fighting so hard to upload the stuff to eventually find out the subway car, and when Peter finds it, it's just a video of his dad explaining to him what the secret is. Like, there's nothing else he was uploading other than that video, apparently.
I'm trying to think if that's true. And if that is true, that's stupid.
There might have been more. They're just trying to hold it for the third one.
Okay.
I
don't know.
Well, why did that video take so long to upload? It was he had to restart it like
it was
three times.
they were on an air
And
line.
remember, that was 10 years ago.
So he was on dial-up?
Upload speed. Oh, don't even get me started on that. When he had to plug the stupid computer back to a landline in the airplane, it's like I saw him plug in the Ethernet cable. I'm like, is there a router on the plane?
It was a private jet. They had all sorts of amenities. You don't know about that.
But anyways, yeah, I don't know. I'm
going to read through this. They also had this thing where I hate the psychopaths. I'm going crazy picture wall that has string and ribbon and pictures and things circled in red and like.
I wasn't going crazy. He was inspired.
It was a bunch of gibberish. They never explained to us what any of it meant. It never explained why would this string be associated with that one, or what he was getting from anything on this wall.
It was there for Aunt May to find.
Okay. I mean, from a storytelling standpoint, I understand what you're saying. And then I also had this problem with every corporation in this movie was Oscorp. The hijacked truck at the beginning of the movie was an Oscorp truck. Jamie Foxx's character works at Oscorp. Gwen Stacy works at Oscorp. Of course, Norman Osborn's the CEO of Oscorp. But then that insane asylum is run by Oscorp, and Oscorp is developing all of these different technologies that are going to result in new characters down the road. Billboards, bus benches, all that. This advertising was about Oscorp. I mean, it's to me, it felt again like because the Marvel properties are so structured, the only corporation that this version of Marvel knows is Oscorp. So we're inundated with every company has to be Oscorp.
Well, just be happy it wasn't a Sony logo.
Well, now you said that's true.
How awesome would it have been to have that truck that Rhino was stealing in the beginning? Would have been a Stark thing.
Right. It could have been Stark, or I mean, that's what I was thinking.
You bastard.
It could have been Stark, or even if you go back to that Ultimate line of comics, Peter Parker's father actually has an association with Trask Industries, and Trask is the one who creates the Sentinels in the X-Men line of movies. But again, they can't show any kind of crossover, so we'll just make everything Oscorp.
Well, they can't show crossover. We could talk about that later.
So, something else that bothered me in this movie is that Harry Osborn's whole inspiration, and Dave, you touched on this, it's his increasingly advancing hereditary disease that he's trying to find a cure for, and he's intent on kind of experimenting on himself with the spider venom to try to cure himself. But Felicia tells him, and he finds it, that there's like this healing suit that's down in the basement. I mean, it seems to me like the healing suit is the solution, not the spider venom. So why
it wasn't a healing suit, James? Wasn't it the things that were in the box?
What?
The venom inside the box. It wasn't the healing suit, she said.
She said that there was a healing suit and he put it on.
No, I thought they saved the venom.
They did say venom. She told him a list of things that were down in the basement. Oh. One of them was the venom, and another one was a healing suit. And he used the venom, which almost killed him, so he put on the healing suit. But why wouldn't he put the healing suit on first? And then
I think the healing. I don't think the healing suit would have cured his hereditary disease. I think it just helped prevent him from dying from whatever sort of physical stuff was happening to him after he took the venom. I'm
not convinced of that.
Well, they didn't show it very well, so most things, you have to kind of conjecture it.
And for some reason, there's a hydroglider on the bottom of that suit. But
why does the healing suit need a glider? Does anybody understand that?
Well, because it just does. It looks good with it.
Okay.
We should have took scores after we finished this review. Or discussed.
So, okay, I just want to say the movie's almost 2.5 hours long, and it did not need to be. There is this scene where Peter Parker and Aunt May are arguing about the laundry. I was sitting there going, what is this?
It's from the trailer.
And then there are throwaway scenes where...
They show the Sony laptop.
There are throwaway scenes where Aunt May is talking to someone on the phone about going back to school and about getting double shifts. And
don't even get me started on the nursing stuff.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
Well, that was the setup of the ending, that she was doing something at 10 p.m. at night.
She doesn't have to be doing something.
No.
She's sitting around the house. That's all she has to do.
Watching the TV. or oh no, the airline is about to crash.
I mean, they kind of wanted to explain that Aunt May was sacrificing personally in order to put Peter through school, but in the amount of time it took me to say that right now is all the time they needed to devote to that. Because that's a pretty powerful thing, that this older woman who is actually not even like your mom or anything, who's taken over the raising of you, she's sacrificing for your benefit. I mean, I think that's the overall story they wanted to tell in this movie, but it didn't need all of this exposition that they tried to shoehorn in. And so there's also these agonizing minutes where Spider-Man is following Gwen Stacy around town. And it's just kind of for a one-note payoff where, she kind of asks him about it. That wasn't needed. Don't even get me started about this whole conversation that Gwen and Peter had in a closet. And I'm going like, aren't you guys like in trouble, or like, shouldn't you be trying to escape? And they're sitting there having this conversation. So I feel like, and don't even let me forget about that psychopath wall that he was assembling for half an hour. So I know that I could shave 30 minutes off of this movie because there's all of this exposition and stuff that doesn't need to be here. And I don't even think that all that stuff that I just named to you, I don't think that stuff makes this a better movie. So at a minimum, you just end up with a shorter movie that's equally as entertaining. But it might even make it a better movie to cut half an hour out of this thing.
Did anybody understand the web shooter thing? I was really confused.
What do you mean, that his web shooters got shorted out?
Yeah, I saw that. And then he went to his, I guess, scientific lab room or whatever it was, garage. What was he doing there?
He was trying to figure out a way to stop them from getting shorted out. So he kept attaching batteries to them to see if the batteries would short out his web shooters. Okay. Because that's what Electro did. Electro threw electricity at him and shorted out his web shooters. So he's trying to combat that.
Okay.
And then when he explained it to Gwen Stacy, she solved it in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Oh, shouldn't you reverse the polarity of blah, 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 blah? Oh, yeah, basic science.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna interject here and say that because we're talking a lot about Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker now, that I personally felt like the thing that was holding this entire film together for me was the relationship between Peter and Gwen.
Yes.
I think that's probably the only thing the script did right. Is that it really solidified the two of them together, and of course there's the natural chemistry between the two actors because they're an off-screen item, but I think the scenes that you mentioned that could probably be cut, I'm kind of iffy on that because I think almost everything in this with Peter and Gwen together was probably the best things this movie had in it as far as like as far as the story goes.
You mean when they actually follow the comic book in a certain way?
Something like that. And of course, there's some emotional payoff, like, during the finale that really makes all those scenes between Peter and Gwen that more, I think, powerful, I guess would be the right word. I don't know. It's just I think they did a really good job of setting that up. And the people, I was with my girlfriend and a friend of ours in the theater, and there wasn't very many people in the theater because we were at an early showing for it. But like the reaction that happens during the finale, there's a certain moment. I'm really dancing around spoilers here. We're gonna have to talk about this in the spoiler section. Was a genuine like surprise at what happened, and I think that the stuff between Peter and Gwen throughout the movie really set you up well for that moment.
Unless you watch the commercial on TV, that ruins it. But go ahead.
That's horrible. But I don't know.
So I mean, I'm basically done. I feel like this. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, I'm not sure exactly what all should be in spoiler section. Should we talk about the Sinister Six stuff in spoilers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I could bring up something as well, and I would say that all the action scenes and 3D effects and everything else in this movie were pretty badass.
I saw this in 2D, by the way.
Oh my gosh. Anyways, I thought the 3D was pretty awesome. That first scene when he's flying around and everything, or swinging around, wow. That pretty much captured the essence of being Spider-Man, or getting a feeling of what it's like to be Spider-Man. I thought it was pretty incredible.
But I think the web slinging has always been what either one of these series has done well, because that's what drew people to the very first Spider-Man movie, was when you saw the fluidity of the Spider-Man characters swinging through town and stuff. And I think
it's much better now, though.
We're advancing technology. I think every new Spider-Man movie is going to be something of an improvement of that special effect. But I mean, just to wrap my part up, is that I felt that this is a good start to the summer movie season, and as a summer movie, it's a good popcorn flick with really good comic book action, and I think that's what you're looking for in like a kind of a start of the summer comic book film. It had some interesting character development, and I agree that like the relationship between Peter and Gwen is what is good, but like there's a lot of exposition and stuff that I wasn't really keen on. And then I also, like I said before, just to recap a little, I felt that Jamie Foxx and Dean DeHaan were really exceptional in their roles. So overall, I mean, this is a movie that I liked. I cannot say that I loved it, but I certainly can't say that I hate it. And I came into it thinking that I was going to hate it. So I mean, it's exceeded expectations is the least of what I can say.
Yeah.
I have another side question about the movie too. Did they ever explain spider sense to people in the movie at all? In part 1 or part 2? Because I can see really confusing people. Like my wife had no idea that he was able to do that. Sense when people, because a lot of the slow motion parts is him using his spider sense.
That's a very good point. And actually, the first encounter with Electro, he's like 2 miles away having a conversation with Gwen, and he looks to the left, and she's like, "What the hell are you looking at?" And when she looks back, he's gone.
Yeah.
And that was completely spider sense. And yeah, if people don't understand that, then that's a problem.
Well, and also, why wouldn't Spider sense that people are following him?
What are you talking about?
Remember, the people from Oscorp were in that truck following him.
No, I don't remember.
Okay.
Oh no, they were following Harry when they were talking by the river.
Oh, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they weren't a threat. Spider sense only kicks in when there's a threat.
Okay.
But again, who's going to know that if you're not familiar with this?
Yeah. I'm just
Dave,
going
I'm
to
sorry.
reiterate real quick what Brian was saying, that I can't speak about the 3D, but the action in this movie is pretty top notch.
Mm-hmm.
The effects, of course, are really good, but I was really surprised at the action scenes, especially the everything with Electro. That first scene in Times Square was pretty awesome. From how everything that happened in that scene was just was pretty spectacular, and I love the ending scene where I'm not going to really get into what happened with Electro during their final conflict, but it's probably my favorite implementation of the song "Itsy Bitsy Spider" ever. So, and also, I mean, I got to throw this out there because this is a problem I had before, that I think Andrew Garfield did a much better job as Peter Parker this time.
Yes.
Where the first film, he felt very awkward and very weird, but I think he did a much better job this time. And once again, as Spider-Man, he is pretty much perfect when he's inside the suit. His little quips and everything he makes are pretty spot on.
Yeah,
So
I want to
really,
bring about. Go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
I was just going to finish up by saying that the trademark Spider-Man humor is in place in this, and it really helps the film a lot.
And I'll add on to that. And I'm tired of reading how people say Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man was better. Maybe I'm forgetting or something, but Spider-Man was never really as nerdish as Tobey Maguire portrayed him to be.
I think you are forgetting.
It's super geeky like that. And because people say he was like every news article saying, "Oh, well, this guy's just model looks and he's not geeky or anything."
The thing is that Spider-Man's gone through a bunch of different iterations, and the Spider-Man in high school was very, very geeky and nerdy. Once he graduated high school, he became a little bit of a more confident character. And then progressively, as he got older than that, when he's kind of post-college age, he's very confident. But the high school Peter Parker was like a nebbish, nerdish kind of guy.
So Garfield's playing the college Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Okay. Or the Ultimate Spider-Man. I never read that, but okay.
Okay. All right. I guess that leaves us clear and leave us into spoiler territory. So, if any of you out there have not seen the movie yet and do not wish to have any of the film's many secrets spoiled for you, now would be a good time to take off, because we are about to spoil the shit out of this thing. Where should we start off with, gentlemen? Do you want to start with Sinister? You want to start with Gwen?
Yeah.
Okay. Unlike most people.
Let me stop you, Dave.
Oh, okay.
We really need to reiterate that this is not a joke. That if you don't want stuff spoiled, you need to check out now.
We were all very upset when she left to England.
So,
damn that bitch.
Oh boy, always taking it. Yeah, because there are major spoilers to be had here. So if someone has an intention of having or of seeing this movie that hasn't seen it already and doesn't want major things spoiled, they need to check out. So continue, sir.
Okay. We mentioned earlier about foreshadowing with Dennis Leary's characters, Captain Stacy showing up. Of course, reminding Peter that if he stays with Gwen, that he's just gonna eventually hurt her, and the other foreshadowing comes in the sense of what I just joked about Gwen leaving the city and heading off overseas for a school over there. Like, and then eventually we get to a scene where Peter says, screw it, I'm going to go with you. It's like anybody that knows the typical cliches of these types of situations knows that something's going to happen where that what they're talking about isn't going to happen. And on top of that, anybody fans of the comic book series and whatnot, who know the history of the character Gwen Stacy, pretty much knew going into this, at least maybe into this, maybe into the next one, what was going to occur with her character. So
all of us knew ahead of time, right? No one was surprised.
Yeah, I knew.
I did not know.
I didn't know they were going to do it in this movie.
James, how do you know comics and not know?
No, I did not believe that they had the guts to do it, or even the desire, because she's such a star, and as Dave was saying, the chemistry, well, it's real life chemistry between her and Garfield is so strong. I mean, that's money. That's box office. So I felt like there wouldn't be the Hollywood will to go through with what you assume would happen the moment you hear the name Gwen Stacy.
Well,
Maybe
but
I'll tell you what the tip-off is. The moment that Spider-Man says, well, they have crime in England too, so I can just go over there. Well, that Spider-Man's not moving to England. So let's just forget about it was over for me at that point. But going into this movie, I wasn't sure.
My tip-off was that the outfit she wore is exactly the same outfit in the comic.
Oh. Wow. That's pretty
good. I
good.
don't know that I'll accept your word on that, sir.
Okay, let's go find a picture.
I didn't doubt you. I just said I don't know that.
And I got to mention real quick that the final scenes in this, like with where it's basically becomes Spider-Man and Gwen versus Green Goblin, Harry Osborn. I had deja vu going on with the Harry Osborn character, and I was thinking about bringing this up earlier, but I guess I'll bring it up now. Where I was reminded a lot of what Christopher Nolan did with Harvey Dent and The Dark Knight, where he was like, he put multiple villains in The Dark Knight, but Harvey Dent was basically a normal character throughout the entire film, and then the very last act of the film, he turns into the villain. And I kind of saw them doing, Mark Webb, the director of this, kind of trying to do the same thing with Harry Osborn. Not nearly as successful, unfortunately, but their final confrontation there at the end with the three of them reminded me a lot of the final confrontation between Batman and Two-Face in The Dark Knight at the end of that film. But I just wanted to mention that real quick. To get that out there. But anyways, so yeah, the scene with Gwen Stacy, I'm not even sure there's any way to really beat around the bush about this, but Gwen Stacy, I'm not even sure how to lead into this. But okay, I'll tell you this. This is a good way to lead us into this conversation. Both my girlfriend and her friend had no idea what was going to happen to Gwen Stacy. And then when Gwen Stacy started falling down that shaft, and you saw Spider-Man just leap down to try and get her in slow motion and everything, my girlfriend told me this after the fact, but she was already assuming that Spider-Man was going to save her. Mm-hmm. And her friend was also
to be the assumption, yes.
Yeah, it's like he's going to save her. And I think Mark Webb. If Mark Webb was responsible for this, it was ingenious, because the moment when Spider-Man's web, which looks suspiciously like a hand reaching out to grab her, by the way, the moment it latched onto her, I think that lulled everybody into a false sense of security that he saved her.
Yes.
And that little thump.
when that shot when she just comes down and he tightens the thing at the last second, a second too late, and she just bumps and bounces back up. My girlfriend and her friend let out this giant audible gasp, they couldn't believe it. And they nailed that scene. They nailed it. And Andrew Garfield's performance after the fact, when he went down there to try to wake her up was like icing on the cake.
And they're like, "What can we do more? Let's have a little piece of blood come out of her nose."
That for me was the best scene in the entire film, and it's because of all the stuff they did well building up to that between those two characters. But the death of Gwen Stacy, I think, is a huge shock for a lot of people out there.
It's because no one's ever really seen that in comic movie form. Have we?
Well, it's not the first
time.
time. It's not the first time that like a love interest has been killed off. I mean, just going back to my Dark Knight comparison, they killed off Rachel Dawes in that. So,
I guess.
But
I don't think people like her anyway. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like this one's even worse because you like the character, a lot of like James said, Emma Stone's like a huge box office draw right now. She's like the Hollywood princess or whatnot, and they killed her. So,
and I'll agree wholeheartedly with you, Dave, that the way that they set it up. First of all, before it got to where you're saying, he did save her that way. He caught her with a web and kind of hooked her on something while he continued to fight Harry. And then that whole clock tower started breaking, and so he's chasing her and he gets her with the web again. And there's that ever so subtle thump, like bang. I was like, "Oh, did they do it? Did they do it?" And then I'm kind of on the edge of my seat, like, well, what's going to happen? And like he goes down and he's cradling her and stuff, and I'm like, man, if she gasps and wakes up, this is such a cop out. And then, like Brian said, the blood squirts out of her nose, and I was like, I think they did it.
Yeah.
and they did it. It's a powerful moment, even for someone who, like, if you think you knew what was going to happen. The way that story is told is really powerful. Brian, did your girlfriend know what was going to happen? I'm sorry, your wife.
I'm going to tell you said that. Yes.
She did, because you spoiled it for
her. Honestly, no, I don't think she knew. I think I told her ahead of time, and then she didn't remember. She tends to not remember things that are not important to her.
I was so glad I didn't tell my girlfriend.
Yeah,
I was, it was like, it would have ruined it.
That was a really good piece of storytelling.
Yeah. Yep.
At this point, Spider-Man has decimated the Stacy family. Like I have
watch out for a new supervillain coming.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I have expected a villain is going to come out of the Stacy family.
Well, she had a brother, and his name was Flash, I believe. Just kidding.
Sure.
Oh boy. And I think that leads into the false endings you were talking about, James, where I almost got the feeling that they didn't know how to end this movie. Like they could have cut it off at maybe like a couple, maybe even 3 different points, and I think they decided to go ahead and go with the heroes back in action ending, which I don't know. I almost kind of wish that we would have been left on edge on the point where Spider-Man was out of action.
Mm-hmm. But see that okay, so. I had earlier in this show, I had said that I have a feeling about that. I feel that the studio and the executives did not want to end this movie on a note where you're unsure if Spider-Man's going to continue. I feel like they didn't have the
balls.
Okay, to go through with something like that. But then that's why I say it would have been even better then to end the movie where Spider-Man has kind of, whatever you want to call it, retired. He's no longer active. And then in the Easter egg, in the after credits scene, show the whole Rhino thing in its entirety, which is like a 3 or 4 minute scene. I think it would have worked better that way. And then the people who stuck around would have known that number one, Spider-Man is back, but number two, we know that a lot of people don't stick around, so I think the word of mouth about, oh, did you see that fight with Rhino at the end, might have even drawn people back to the theaters. So I think it's a missed opportunity.
No, there was time to promote another movie entirely.
Oh, don't even
boy.
get me started.
Do we want to get into this right now?
Yeah, we have to talk about
Let's
this.
talk about after Sinister Six, though.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, we got to talk about the Sinister Six, because the scene before we got to see the Rhino appear at the end was we saw Harry in that. Was he in the lab or whatever that Oscorp building was that they had Electro in, right? I guess.
I assumed it was that, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, anyways, he's in there kind of looking like he's in prison or whatnot. And we get introduced to what I'm assuming is the same exact character that met up with Kurt Connors at the end of the last film.
It is, and I know who he is.
And I, as soon as I heard the name, I Googled it, and I know who he is now too.
What do you know?
Was it Mr. Fears, and he's the guy that's responsible for bringing together the Sinister Six. He's also called the Gentleman.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So that's about all I got out of my Google search.
James is now looking him up. It's
I
the
know.
Gentleman Spider-Man. Yeah.
So, I mean, they may not. They announced that they were planning the Sinister Six stuff well after the first Amazing Spider-Man came out. So I think they were either very lucky or somebody in there threw this character in there as a just in case at the end of the last film, because that is probably the best sort of connections that they've done so far between these two films, is by having that character kind of be their evil version of the Nick Fury character that's been linking all the Marvel movies together.
But they haven't explained his motive of setting that all up.
No, they haven't.
Okay. So here's a couple of things that I was thinking about, and I read some stories after I saw the movie. People were saying that one of the characters that were against Harry is the Vulture. Is that correct?
Was against Harry?
Yeah, one of the people in Oscorp, I guess, becomes the Vulture. Was it what's his name? The dude that was talking to Jamie Foxx's character? I don't know. What's the Vulture's name?
Well,
that's pretty much how you find out.
Yeah.
Let me Amazing Spider-Man 2. Okay, as we look that up too, then the person that was torturing Electro inside the Ravencroft, I thought that might be a Doc Ock until they mentioned his name.
Kafka.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've actually seen posts from fans that have seen the movie that say that was a really hugely missed opportunity.
But he had the glasses, he had the craziness, and everything else.
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
Yeah.
James, do you have a name yet?
Adrian Toomes, and I'm looking through the cast of the movie, and I don't see that name.
Okay. Someone was saying that.
But yeah, so we saw all the machinery down there in their special projects section. And we saw it when Harry Osborn went down there, but I think we got a little bit better look when that Mr. Fears guy was walking through down there. And then of course Harry's line of just keep it small, Sinister Six. Not really a huge revelation considering that Sony's announced it a year ago that they were making a Sinister Six movie,
But everybody's looking for the clues and the tie-ins, so
yeah,
that's where it was.
Yeah,
that's what they're saying. Remember the guy that they shocked? The guy who was trying to take over Oscorp, and he got shocked by Electro, and then brought back to life.
Oh yeah. I know.
They're saying he's going to be the Vulture.
Oh,
I see.
Okay.
Well, I mean, when Harry was down in the basement looking for the Venom, and when he found the healing suit, did you see Doc Ock's arms
Yeah.
and the Vulture's wings?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying, like, so Oscorp is essentially going to be responsible for all of these guys, because they had all of that apparatus down there in that secret tomb.
So that's what. So you have Goblin, Ock, Vulture, Rhino. That's 4.
Does the lizard come back at all? Is that part of it?
I'm assuming. So that's 5.
The problem is the Sinister Six has had like dozens of lineups. One of the major characters in Sinister Six was Kraven the Hunter, and like I don't know if Kraven's going to be part of it, but Kraven would be awesome. It done well. But yeah, like Lizard's been part of it, and everybody you've named has been part of it. So
And and don't forget that Sony is also planning a standalone.
and Electro's been part of it.
Oh, okay. Sony's also planning a standalone Venom movie.
Oh, I see.
So
Well, they have to set that up some kind of way. When are they going to do that?
I don't know, but it's not. I don't think the movie's actually going to be titled like Venom or something like that. It's not going to be a traditional Spider-Man movie. So nobody knows how they're going to do that yet. But
I don't understand.
that's on their list of confirmed projects, though.
And James, were you okay with the Rhino outfit?
So that's something else that I said I was going to hate, because clearly, in the comic books, Rhino is not a mech warrior. But I mean, I don't hate it, especially now I see where they're going, where like Oscorp has these different apparatus that is going to end up, arming the Sinister Six. I see kind of why they did it this way, and if they have Paul Giamatti, I'm okay with that. I mean, in a larger role, I think. I think when he was cast, it's probably for the future because he hardly had any speaking in this. And he's a phenomenal actor, so I'm kind of okay with it.
Okay.
The only problem I had is that, so at the end of credits, he's shooting up the cops. A kid comes in with a Spider-Man costume, and then here it comes. He stops shooting, which okay, fine, a kid. But then his arch enemy, the guy who needs to kill is Spider-Man, walks in front of him, which I'm assuming would pretty much keep the kid in danger that whole time, because wouldn't you think Rhino would shoot Spider-Man as soon as he saw him walk behind the kid?
I guess I don't know.
It is a moment that you have to suspend disbelief, because the safest thing to do would be Spider-Man on approach would web shoot the kid and pull him out of harm's way.
Right.
Oh, now this reminded me of something. So, Spider-Man's webs are notoriously some of the strongest material that anyone's ever created, because he can suspend cars and buses and all of this stuff with his web. And when he webs Gwen Stacy's hand to the hood of the car, she pulls out a pocket knife and cuts right through it.
That's true.
What was that?
Maybe it was an Oscorp knife.
Okay.
Well, I just want to know how Gwen Stacy got to one point to the other so fast. She's on the other side of the island, and then all of a sudden she's there where he's fighting Electro in Times Square.
I didn't. Even
I don't
think
know.
about that.
Then she gets her hand webbed, like James is saying, but somehow shows up again across the river over to the power
plant.
Power plant, yeah.
Yep. Well,
maybe she has superpowers.
She did. She didn't use them when she needed them.
all right. I think we should start talking about that end credit scene. So, James, this is the thing that Brian and I knew in advance.
I didn't know anything about this.
That we didn't. We purposely didn't tell you because we wanted the perspective of somebody that, was surprised by it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I got the.
So-
Do you have the story as to why it happened? And we could tell.
Yeah, I have the story as to why it's happening. I'll explain it after James gives us.
Okay.
I'm assuming James is sitting there waiting. Okay, credits going. All right, wait for my end credit sequence.
Mm-hmm.
And
FYI, James is the biggest fan of this I guess, comic book. Go ahead.
So
And-
here's what I thought. I'm sitting there, and like I said to you, maybe it was on Facebook or text message or something, Brian. Like I saw this movie. You did also, but at a different time at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood, and so it's a smart crowd. So very few people actually got up when the credits started. Like I'm talking like 2 or 3 that I saw. Everybody else stayed sitting, and so I was like, cool, everybody's gonna get to see this special scene. It's probably gonna be like some big reveal of Sinister Six, and we're gonna see them all huddling together and like planning to kill Spider-Man and all of this. And so I'm like really amped up, geeked up, like, oh man, Sinister, yeah, all right. Who's gonna play Doc Ock? Like, what are the arms gonna look? Okay, let's check this out. So then the scene starts. I go, here we go. And the scene is playing, and I'm like, how does this relate to Sinister Six? I'm not trying to put it. I'm not. And then I'm like, this is a little bit of like, is this? And then it's X-Men, and I'm like
Mystique shows up.
it's Mystique, and I'm like, does Spider-Man join the X-Men? Like, what? How does this? How are they gonna tie this together? And like where the I'm interested, Spidey and the X-Men. That's something that's always been kind of teased in the comics because people were unsure if he was born with his powers, which would make him a mutant that could be in the X-Men. And the scene plays out, and then I'm like, this kind of feels like a lead up to Days of Future Past, and it ends, and then I go, wait. Was that a commercial? Did I just see a commercial in the middle of a movie? And unrelated, like, it's not even about this at all. It's like a completely unrelated commercial in the middle of a movie. Like, when did we start doing this? I'm surprised it didn't hold up like a Pepsi can. But that was my. So I spent a lot of this confused because I was trying to figure out how this relates to Spider-Man and everything. And then when I realized that it was X-Men, I still was like trying to figure it out. And then when it was over, I was like, I think you owe me like $1 for watching a commercial. Like I don't see how this is part of my movie going experience.
Did you do the same thing I did, where I sat there still and watched the end just to make sure there was nothing else?
Okay. At that point, after that commercial,
I was like, there has to be something else.
After that commercial, I'd say a percentage of people left the theater, like 10% or 20 maybe. But the overwhelming majority of people still waited around to the very end, and there was kind of a sigh of disappointment when there was nothing at the very end.
Yeah.
Especially because what we did get was a commercial. I think that was more of a slap in the face of not having than not having anything at the very end.
It wasn't even a good commercial.
I could not even assess that because I was in a state of confusion.
Okay, maybe it's confusion. I just thought, oh my god, this is not to be good.
So yeah, there's the confusion out there because we've all been led to believe that 20th Century Fox owns the rights to X-Men, Sony owns the right to Spider-Man, and Marvel owns the rights to all of its Avengers and whatnot. That there would never ever be a studio crossover, or else it would have already happened by now. And then we go and we get a friggin' X-Men, like you said, commercial at the end of Amazing Spider-Man. A Sony movie has a 20th Century Fox movies commercial embedded in their movie. I'm assuming that when this movie gets released on Blu-ray or whatever, that X-Men commercial is still going to be in there. It's going to be forever tied to this movie, and it has, like you said, it has nothing to do with it. There's no going to be Wolverine's not going to show up in the next Spider-Man movie. Spider-Man's not going to show up in the next X-Men movie. The reason why this happened is it's all business. The director of the film of Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, Mark Webb, whose only film credit before these films was he made a small independent movie called 500 Days of Summer. Now, the reason why that's relevant is because he made that film for 20th Century Fox. And he was actually under contract from 20th Century Fox to make 2 films. And he only made 500 Days of Summer. Then Sony grabbed him to come over and make Amazing Spider-Man. And then Sony, pretty much being greedy like they are, kept him on for the next couple, the next 2 Spider-Man movies they're making. So since Mark Webb was in breach of contract with 20th Century Fox because of Sony's like, hey, here's what we'll do for you. We'll throw a clip of your movie at the end of our movie. And 20th Century Fox agreed to it, and that's why we have an X-Men commercial at the end of Spider-Man.
It is so bad.
And it's not even a good clip. That's the worst part of it. It's like, looking at that, I was like, it looked like a fan-made clip. It looked so bad. I don't know.
Can't wait to see the full movie.
That just looked... Yeah,
I don't know what to say. It's fairly ridiculous. I mean, I understand now that you say, like, he was kind of under contract by Fox and to pay him for the breach, to pay them for the breach, they kind of agreed to this. But, like, what if this hadn't been a Spider-Man movie? What if this was like The Butler or a 12 Years a Slave? You're gonna put a commercial in the middle of this is ridiculous.
It's even more ridiculous because, I mean, Sony, as greedy as they are, and 20th Century Fox, you know that they have to understand that fans out there wish that they will cross over.
Right.
So doing this,
half of my review was about what if these movies could cross over.
It's like dangling the carrot in front of the audience. You know, it's like, hey, wouldn't this be cool if this happened? And like, no, it's not going to happen. It's really stupid.
Have Spider-Man swing by the school, talk with Professor X, something like that.
It's nothing. It's really bad marketing, and they really shouldn't play with the emotions of their fans.
But see, the thing is, if Sony's willing to do that, remember all the rumors about like how the ending scene in Avengers, the shawarma scene, was supposed to have Peter Parker like walk in and walk back out. Like, imagine just how amazing that would have been. But it's my understanding Sony didn't want to do that.
Yeah, apparently Joss Whedon probably needed to be under contract with one of them and breach it.
Right.
And then maybe they would have done it.
I just don't understand. I mean, I'm pretty sure Disney and Marvel would pony up the money that they would want. I mean, nothing crazy, but
I think Sony is seeing dollar signs for like decades into the future. They're not looking like it's just a couple movies. They're looking to really milk this sucker.
That's a bad thing.
Yeah.
When they could just work together and make money, both of them, at the same time.
I think the problem that none of these studios is seeing is that the Marvel universe is one universe, and it's a part of comic books to have crossover, where like if you wander into this neighborhood, you might see that character. You wander into that neighborhood, you might see this character. Like, that's how comic books work. And for them to pull these pull these franchises out and show them in isolation, it's only hurting the end product, and which is going to affect their bottom line. And they should be wanting to work together because the product would be better. And I don't understand why they can't see that.
Yeah, I don't know. So earlier, I mentioned that there was at least one other news thing to go over that was directly related to Spider-Man.
What was that?
Gentlemen, I open up your chats windows. Okay. Unfortunately, those at home are not going to be able. Those watching us are probably not going to be able to do this. I am putting a link in here, and you guys get to see what was supposed to be the Amazing Spider-Man 2's end credit scene.
Oh my God!
With actual images from the actual images from the cut scene.
Oh, it's not video form, just images.
Yeah.
Okay.
So while these guys are perusing this, I'll explain to you, everybody else out there who can't see the images. Basically, you're seeing the special projects room. You get to see Mr. Fears, who we were discussing earlier, walking around there, and in the background, you see in one of the cages or one of the rooms in the special projects, you see kind of like a box with a head in it. And what has been described now by many people who've seen these images, this is supposedly Norman Osborn's frozen head. And this was supposed to be a scene where they were going to be revealing that they were going to somehow or another bring Norman Osborn back in the future films. And nobody has given any word as to why this was cut.
Because it doesn't work anymore. If this is what you're going to do, then you didn't need the maniacal Harry Osborn. The Goblin has never really worked that way, where they're both villains at the same time. And yeah, I don't know how that's going to work, or if they're going to follow through with it.
Yeah, people had remarked about, like, when the scene directly after Norman Osborn dies, and when they showed them prepping his bedroom, they showed them actually scanning his sheets and all this other stuff. People were saying that was because of what this end credit scene was gonna lead into, or it was gonna explain what they were doing there, where they were scanning his blood and all this other stuff to preserve him or something like that. But if it's like you said, if maybe things changed along the lines during production, and they're like, this isn't going to work, and they probably didn't have another end credit scene to shoot, so the only one they had to scrap it.
Just so you know, I'm reading the comments here, and I'm not sure if this is true or not, but some guy from Quebec said they didn't get the X-Men, they got this one. That would add some more confusion if that really is true.
Great. But yeah,
that can't be, because this doesn't even look like film. It looks like a rendering.
What are you talking about? Looks like a shot film picture.
The Gentleman looks real to you? That initial frame looks like a rendering to me.
That looks real.
It looks real to me, but I don't know.
Okay.
Jesus.
Why you got to go down that road?
But yeah.
All right.
Yeah, not much more to say about that. But I think anybody that's listened to us up to this point and or watched us up to this point, I think you've gotten the complete Amazing Spider-Man 2 discussion. I don't think there were any stones left unturned. I mean, this was a lengthy episode. I kind of expected that to be that, but like I said, there was a lot to discuss, and I think we covered everything, even things that were not in the film that were supposed to be. So, but yeah, any last thoughts on the film before we wrap this up, guys?
Summer has started. I'm excited. Not sure why.
So what's our next big film?
Godzilla.
Godzilla.
By the way, do not watch any more YouTube videos or conversations. Something's been ruined for me already, so avoid it.
Yeah, they're really showing a lot of stuff now. I heard.
Stupid shit, man. I'm so pissed when I heard that stuff.
I haven't read or heard anything recently, so I'm okay. But I still got like another week and a half for that to come out.
How do you do such a good job of hiding it, and then all of a sudden now you show all this stuff?
I don't know.
Maybe they're concerned and think they need to build the hype more.
I think people who are not even into Godzilla are interested in seeing this movie. So.
But yeah, next week. I think the only major movie coming out next week is that Seth Rogen comedy, Neighbors.
And I will be seeing it.
Yeah, I will definitely be seeing that. Heard a lot of great things about that movie. So
that's also one of my movies in the summer movie draft.
Oh, look who came to visit! You better not pee on my floor, you stupid dog. All right.
Awesome.
Oh, there he goes. What is he doing? No wires. No, not the wires. Hey.
All right. Before we get any on-camera defecation here, I think we should end this.
The show went about 60 seconds too long.
So yeah, we're gonna end this. We're gonna be back next week with a review of Neighbors, most likely. And like usual, if you want to catch any of our other either our YouTube videos, you can go to our channel for that film podcast on YouTube. And you can also go to our website at lightsremoteaction.com and get the video feeds off of there, as well as subscribe to our podcast, our audio version of the show through iTunes, which there's a link for on our website for that as well. Yeah, I guess that's it. We're done. Finito. So that's it. Everybody out there, take care and have a good week.
Thank you.